right, everybody, welcome to WG Festival 2024 and welcome to Inside the Writer's Room with Agatha all along. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am for this panel, so I'm going to make my introduction very, very brief. For this session, feel free to engage in the session chat, including to ask your questions in the session chat. Do not use the special Q&A box in this session. Just put your questions in the comments section. That's where we'll be able to see them when Q&A begins at the 45-minute mark, so at 5:45. So that is all from me. I'm going to turn it over to Joanna Robinson. Joanna, take things away.
Hello, I'm Joanna Robinson. Thank you all for joining us. The incredible Boner Family Reunion is about to begin. Here we are with the Agatha All Along, a writer's room. I'm going to introduce everyone by name and have you guys sort of wave, though I think your names are on the boxes, hopefully for everyone to see. At least I can see them, so that's helpful. Jac Schaeffer, mother showrunner. Here she is. Hello, Jac. Laura Dunny, who's a credited writer on episode 2 and 9. Cam Squires in absentia. Cam is not here, writer of episode 3 and co-writer of episode 7. Joanna Sarkis, credited writer on episode 4. Hello. Laura Monti, credited writer on episode 5. Jason Rostovsky, story editor and credited writer on episode 6. And Megan McDonald, who is a consulting producer. I hope that's your correct title. Gia King, credited writer on episode 7. Peter Cameron, credited writer on episode 8. And that's the whole gang. The gang is all here. Here we are. I want to start by asking, I'm such a huge fan of the show. I know that everyone watching is such a huge fan of the show. And a lot of people who watched Agatha All Along also watched WandaVision. Not everyone, but a lot of them. And so I wanted to start by asking those of you who also worked on WandaVision, which I believe is Laura, Peter, and am I missing anyone? Megan, of course. I want to ask you guys, in terms of Jac's, let's just start by complimenting Jac, shall we? In terms of Jac's leadership, how would you compare working with her on her first show as a showrunner, WandaVision, compared to watching her run the room on Agatha All Along? Any one of you can start. Or I can make some start. Peter,
I think my favorite thing was that for WandaVision, we all sat down at the table and I had no idea what anybody else's title was. So it really felt sort of as even a playing field as I've ever encountered in Hollywood. And it was just like, yeah, let's learn first names as fast as we can. And there are no titles on office doors to get intimidated by. And it was the same spirit and same reality on Agatha. Like we didn't get bogged down with past credits or what people had done in the past. It was just like, come to the table, have your ideas. She'll pick a baseball team both times that really specializes. Everybody has special skills within the rooms, and you'll be called on for those things. They'll be like, hey, what's a mind-bending twist, Gia? Hey, what's a super, emotional thing, Laura Donnie? Hey, any friggin' weird ideas, Peter? And it's consistently fun that way. Both rooms, both shows.
Excellent. Megan? Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, were you going to talk?
Laura, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I think she'd be fine with me saying this, but Jac was very open in WandaVision about how, this was her first, obviously she's worked in film for a very long time, but, this was her first TV writer's room, and she was still managed to appear and seem incredibly confident, but there was an amount of, it was also my first writer's room. So there was an amount of, we were both we don't know what we're doing, except she fully did. And I eventually did. But I think the difference is coming in on Agatha was just, she was running the ship plus, it was, I think we all came in. I think with Wanda, we were all a little what is this? We like it. Who are we? What's over there? And I think with Agatha, we were all we're here now. And to see Jac really I don't know, stand as tall as she could, you're a smaller lady.
That's a short joke.
Was really cool to just watch like a woman go from like first thing to triumph to like queen of the thing.
I love that. Megan?
Yeah, I think that the thing that's maybe most inspiring to me about Jac's leadership is that we're like so working all the time, and it's just so fun all the time. It's like it feels like we're playing when we're coming up with story or when we're doing this thing or whatever. It's just like I can't believe this is the life we have right now.
And Laura, the other
Yeah,
Laura.
off of exactly what Megan said. I remember Jac telling me at the beginning when she was pulling together the Wanda room that maybe she got the advice or she realized at a certain point that like she wanted the people in that room to be people that she could go on like a cross-country road trip with. And I think that we all had a blast as a result of that. And then she wanted to add new faces to that road trip for the Agatha piece of it, which just made it a whole other type of adventure and experience, which was really cool. And so that was really fun to see the difference between the two rooms. And then also we kind of found things in Wanda along the way, like, you know, musical elements and outfits and different things that when we started Agatha, it was like, where's the outfits? Where's the musical elements? Where's the things that we spent some time trying to find on WandaVision that we loved that are is gonna like then be part of this show as a sequel in more than just a continuation of the story, but just like a whole like, you know, style and tone of like storytelling. So that was kind of cool to see that shift too.
I love that. And then Jac, when you're looking to fill out the baseball team or fill the car for the road trip or whatever other metaphor we want to say for the new members on the team, what were you looking for? What elements were you looking for them to bring?
Well, I mean, we had, you know, we wanted to recapture the spirit of WandaVision, but we had, I mean, this is an Agatha show. She's very different from Wanda. And we knew we wanted it to be witchy and darker. And then we were bringing, you know, Billy Maximoff, you know, into the MCU orbit. So I needed people who could sort of speak the language of the goth and horror and witches and that world. And then I needed people who could service these new voices of these new witches and Billy. And so that's what I was looking for with the new hires is this very new color to a show that is a spinoff that has, you know, a lot of the same fabric, but is trying to, you know, we really wanted to define ourselves in a new way. So yeah, I was like, bring in the spookies with the gooey insides. That's what I found.
The spooky witches. So for the spooky witches who are new to the team, can you talk a little bit about sort of your writing samples, your specs? What did you bring and put in front of Jac? Maybe starting with Jason?
I had a feature spec and like a little sort of sci-fi dramedy kind of a pilot, and that's what I put in front of her.
It was they're not gonna toot their own horn, so I'm gonna jump in here.
Great.
Control freak that I am. It was your sci-fi spec pilot that I loved. Like it was so haunting and just the mood that it cast, and it had, you know, rigorous, like the rules of it kind of washed over you in a way that wasn't like expositional and like an impediment to sort of feeling like really sinking in. Like it felt like it felt like a very weird, I hope you're gonna take this as a compliment, Jason. It felt like damp. Like it was like cool and damp reading your script. And I love that sensation. And then Giovanna and Gia, you talk and I'm gonna interrupt you. So go ahead and start.
Perfect.
I remember that my sample is, so I think the sample you read was my horror sci-fi pilot, right? Well, yeah, that one is like, but it's not about witches, but it does have horror because like the pilot at least is kind of like a haunted house setup. But I mean, I love grounded genre. So, and with like a lot of emotion and drama. So, yeah, there was some of that in my pilot.
But the reason that I hired you was was because it was the mother piece. I had never read a script that in the fabric of the script was an understanding of motherhood by a writer who was not in fact a mother. And I was really impressed and just very, very moved by that, because it was something that was like weirdly beyond the page. And so that's what I loved and what jumped out at me.
And Gia. Oh, Gia, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Do you want to?
Did you accept mic access, Gia?
Go ahead and accept. Be accepting.
Gia, do you want me to move on to something else, and we're gonna come back to you? Will you private chat me if your mic starts working, and I'll come back to this, okay? No worries. I bet we'll figure it out. Okay. Then Jac, I'm gonna swing back to you. I kind of want to go sort of episode by episode and talk to you all about your individual episodes that you worked on. Even though we all know in a writer's room you all work on everything together, but starting with Jac and episode 1, I want to ask you about where do you get the audacity? Where do you get the audacity to linger so long in a Mare of Easttown parody in a first episode? And how much are you thinking about the diehard Marvel heads or the WandaVision stans who are coming in? And how much are you thinking about people who are like, what is this Agatha show? I'll watch it for the first time. I like witches. When you consider something like that.
I didn't think about that. I mean, I did, but I was so like, I mean, the room, all these wonderful, beautiful faces can attest to, like, when I get obsessed with an idea, I really can't be talked down. And I was so obsessed with doing the like prestige detective show. And I also I just wanted to do it myself, like it was selfish, but really, I mean, I'm always thinking about the audience experience. And I just, it was the trick we pulled with WandaVision. And I remember on WandaVision, Kevin saying, like, I was like, how long can we stay black and white? And he was like, I don't know. Let's see how long we can stay black and white. And that gave us the permission to do 2 episodes of black and white, which I still can't believe we did that. It's shocking to me. So I just had I felt that same nerve again, that same the audacity of like, I'm going to keep you in this and you're going to actually like it. Like when it ends, you're going to be like, ooh, did I want to be in that show? So yeah, this is the only way to do that.
I love it. I've watched the first episode with people who are hardcore Marvel fans, and then I also watched it with 2 people who had never. They were just sort of like midway through the season. They're like, "I heard this show was fun and gay, and I want to watch it." And so I was like, "Sure, let's watch it." And then I was just that's my job. I was just explaining. I was like, "Listen, just hold on a second. Get to the end of the episode, and then ask me all your questions." Gia, can we hear you now? What do you think? No. Okay. We're gonna keep. Okay. Do you want to type in the chat really quickly what your spec script was, and I will say it out, and then Jac will shower you with compliments. That sounds like a good plan to me.
Champions adjust. That's what Kevin says all the time.
And then is it true that Gia was part of Dustin mentioned something before we logged on. Was Gia part of a WGA program before she joined the writer's room? Is that true? She said her spec script was a time loop comedy about a girl on her prom night reliving over and over again until she realized she was gay! Exclamation mark. Jac Schaeffer, tell me about Gia's spec script.
Yeah. So it was strange with Gia because I read her spec script later. And so my introduction to Gia was the ideas in the room. And so it was like she was just a killer in the room. It was like she would wait for her moment and then she would come in and say something that would like dazzle everyone and then she would stop. And it was just like every day there was one of those sort of like bombs dropped. And so then when I decided to have her partner with Cam for 107, also, Gia, is it okay if I say when I called you in for it, you thought you were in trouble? Sweet Gia looked so nervous. And I was like, oh gosh, she has no idea that I'm going to give her an episode. But so I was like, I just needed to know that she could write. Like, I was like, her ideas are so good. I don't actually care what's on the page. I'm like, let's just do this. And then it wasn't even relief. Like, I was like, of course, this is delightful. And it was funnier than I expected it to be, because she did bring all the crazy ideas into the room that were really exciting. But it was like, you loved the characters, the way, like in like with a warmth, which then now sort of on the other side of the show being done, with 7 being so meaningful and people connecting in such a deep way, it makes sense, because that spec was the kind of thing that you just love anyone you read who's not a baddie. You're like, I love this person and just want to be with them.
Everyone was nodding along and smiling when you mentioned what I'm now going to call the Gia bombs that she dropped in the room. Does anyone have a memory of one that like particularly stood out to them?
Just generally tying tarot into emotional thematics was constant and always surprised me. And by the way, like, she was doing the job of a writer's assistant on a very lore heavy, talk heavy room, and still being a killer, you know, like a great idea every hour sort of thing. And I don't know, I was a writer's assistant for years in a room, and that was not happening. You know, like, it's such a testament to being able to bifurcate her brain and have both hamster wheels spinning real fast. It's very cool.
And just to say more wonderful things about Gia, the other thing that was really wonderful is Gia watches everything. And so like Gia would always bring up stuff from like my generation and before. And like, for writers out there who are looking to impress their showrunners, watch old stuff. Hot tip.
I love that. Gia messaged our little private chat to say that she was in the WGF Writers Access Support Staff Training Program. And so we're going to come back to this, but something that Jac does that not every showrunner does is really sort of promote up the ranks. And it's something I love about Jac. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get back to Laura Monti. But Laura Donnie, I want to ask you about episode 2. I told Jac before we started recording this that I went and watched, she moderated the WandaVision version of this panel.
That's
and I went back
right.
and just sort of copied directly off of her work. And in that panel, I learned about something called the episode 2 problem. And so you are the credited writer in episode 2 here. So you've nailed the pilot. We've done this whole Mayor of Easttown experiment. Everyone is dazzled by it. They think it's amazing. Now we have to put the band together. We have to put the coven together in episode 2. So can you talk about some of the challenge? Like, what is the episode 2 problem for people who don't know what it is? Can you talk about that and the idea of trying to, with very little time, introduce a whole team of witches into the show?
Yeah. I mean, I think for the work we do, our episode 2 problem in a lot of ways is that like it's really episode 1, or at least for Agatha in this case, it's like the pilot after the fake out pilot. And so I do think, and I think probably in general, like in a pilot, you get to just get all this information out, and then the episode 2 problem is probably like, now what? With Agatha, I feel like it had the problem of a regular pilot, or the hard thing of a regular pilot, which is just an immense amount of exposition in a way that hopefully doesn't feel like exposition. And I think that was probably what felt like, I think that was a big challenge, was just trying to make all this data like yummy and engaging, and people can absorb it as opposed to just like zoning out and not like getting all these important things that we're laying down. So that was a challenge. And then, yeah, to your point, I mean, introducing all these people who all have very distinct characters that we will see throughout the show, and trying to sort of give them their little like opening, this is who they are, without being reductive, without being like overly blatant, like this, like, you know, sporty spice, scary spice. But now that I say that, I feel like that's probably what we did. But those are the challenges. It's giving time and space in a very short amount of time to a lot of hefty characters.
And there was a time where we were going to split it into two, but we were like, we've got to get on the road. And that's the reason I asked Laura to do the episode, is I was like, this is a huge lift that we have to keep economical and funny as all get out. And Laura Donnie, ladies and gentlemen.
And that was, I mean, like those, thank you. And those are challenges, but it is also fun to be like, I mean, there's something a little like manic too, and a way that can be delightful of like, I'm this person, I'm this person, I'm that person, I'm that person. And so that's fun. It's just also, we had all these rules we were trying to set up about like what makes a coven and all, it's all like fun, like interesting stuff. It's just literally about sort of dialoguing it and time. Yes.
I love it. Let's pretend that Cam just said something really insightful about episode 3, and we all learned a lot about episode 3. Thanks, Cam, for your insights. Joanna, let's go to episode 4. I have tried and failed several times to interview the incredible chaos agent that is Aubrey Plaza, in that I've actually had conversations with her, but I don't think I actually interviewed her. So my question is, we have met Rio already, but this is Rio really entering the mix and mixing it up with characters we've spent a little bit of time with already. So can you talk about adding sort of a chaos agent like that into an established team?
I mean, of course, it was a team effort. We talked so much about when to see her again, how to introduce her again. I mean, I think it was just exciting to write it in a little bit of a horror moment that just comes out and everyone gets scared. But also it was exciting to be able to, I don't know, like it was just like Laura said, like how can you introduce a character like economically, right? That people get it. And I think those early moments of not just seeing her come out, but also Agatha being really upset, but also the witches that had never seen her before, they get a vibe. And it's kind of a confusing vibe, but you know, they're going along with it. So I don't know, it was just such an interesting character, I think, a fun character and also a little bit scary.
Jack, can you talk a little bit about, you've spoken in other interviews, and I'm curious, this idea of like how to modulate how much Rio is in the story and when she's there and when she sort of absents herself.
Yeah, I mean, the original incarnation of this character was antagonist and pursuant. So she was sort of and it was it was this debt collector character that was sort of like a witchy T-1000. And so it was really initially that character was deployed like, when do we need pressure? But then when it became Rio and when it became this romantic backstory, strangely, we still had to be careful with how much, you know, she was there. We also there were changes that we had to sort of make like in the moment, because Aubrey is such a specific talent. So more than any other role, any other character, we were sort of like finding her as we were going, because Aubrey is so unpredictable. And I think I've mentioned this before. Giovanna wrote this gorgeous speech at the campfire that was like, that felt like it was from another age, because I think we had this idea, you know, of you know, death being sort of outside of time, but Aubrey Plaza is very much a present creature, and so it didn't entirely work with her energy. And so we shifted that, Aubrey and I kind of like shifted that on the day, but it all was born like it was still fueled by the work in the room. And yeah, I mean, I know we've like, that is the some of the fandom's disappointment, is that they didn't quite get enough of her. But I'm like, I don't know, we might have melted the platform.
I mean, melted my face definitely if we had had more Aubrey. Laura Monti. So Laura worked on WandaVision, but not as a credited writer on an episode. Then you're the credited writer on episode 5. So I have a lot of questions about your episode. I do want to know if you think Ouija boards are as haunted as I think they are. I have a lot of specific questions for you, but I also just want to hear about your experience of like sort of like being lifted up and promoted in a way, and sort of what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be difficult for me to put it into words in the short amount of time that I have, but it was really special because WandaVision was my first live action writer's room. And so I really didn't know what I was stepping into. And I didn't really know what my role was going to be, like kind of by Jac's side as her showrunner's assistant. And so it was really kind of special for me to grow and kind of learn what, like, writing in a live action writer's room is like right in that experience with all these incredible writers that were so friendly and embracing and warming and welcoming, and never made me feel like I couldn't chime in with a good idea when appropriate. Like they were all really treating me as I'll like pick up your lunches and I might get your order wrong by accident once, but like at the same time they're like, let me read your script, or like tell me about what you're writing and working on. And that's just like a universal thing. Also Jac as well, which is just so special, given how much work was just on her plate. And then when she gave me the call to be a staff writer on AGATHA, I think I exploded, and she was like, okay, you just need to get off the phone and call your parents. And I was like, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But it was just, it was a really special, like the whole WandaVision into AGATHA experience was just like a really, kind of just special moment of growth, and very full circle, very my own witch's road journey, so to speak. And so it was really, really fun and special. And, I had the opportunity to be on set for 7 months in Atlanta for WandaVision, which was really cool. And then to be brought on to set for AGATHA when they were filming episode 5 was just like a real full circle kind of fun moment. And then, and Ouija boards are a real thing. I used to, my dorm room was an old Sheraton hotel in Boston area, and the 4th floor was haunted because a writer had died there. And me and my roommates would always go up on the 4th floor and bring a Ouija board with us. And so it is a real thing. The lights would flicker. It would be dim. I believe in them. So yeah.
Horrifying. Thank you so much for sharing that and for putting it inside the show. I guess just really quickly, quick follow-up. Jac's advice off of us talking about this with Gia was sort of like watch old things. Is there any other advice that you would give to writers' assistants or people who want to be sort of noticed in the room, without overwhelming the room with their desire to be noticed?
Yeah, I would say more important than what you might think is the best idea in the world, or what you think is like your opportunity to jump in and like prove how valuable you are. Like your job really is to make the people you're around, their lives easier, and to help them and support them and uplift them. And so I think that, like, for a lot of people, I think that I don't know, I feel like that's something that I always kind of gravitated towards and went back to when I was an assistant, was just like focusing on, okay, what could I do to make Jac's day even like 2% easier, like to just to kind of help out, kind of a thing.
I straight up would not have survived WandaVision without Laura Monti. That is a fact.
All right, Jason. Jason did episode 6. Jason of the Cool and Damp spec script. I love Joe Locke. I love Heartstopper. I was so thrilled with the work you did inside of this episode. I think chiefly, I guess this is sort of similar to the question I asked Laura Donnie, but like, you have so little time to get us to care about the Kaplans as a family unit. and Teddy and William together as a relationship that we are emotionally invested in. So I was wondering if you had any ideas around this idea of sort of emotional shortcuts of these like parents who care about their son and then have to like are caring for this other boy who is not their son, but we still care about them and their relationship. And then Teddy is here very briefly, but we care enormously about him. And also just about queer storytelling and like introducing it on the Disney platform.
Wow. Emotional shortcuts is an interesting idea. I don't really know if I took any. I feel like I kind of just spent a lot of time trying to just like pour everything out onto the page that I could, and then kind of like collated everything that I had. Like I think I just kind of went deep and tried to dig in, and then try to economize once I realized it was too much. So I think I emotionally overdid it, and then I had to clean up a mess a little bit. Yeah, but that is an interesting idea. As for queer storytelling, I don't know. It was I don't know. I didn't really, I think at the time while writing it, think about the queer aspect of it. Like I think everything about his story and everything in the room just felt so like natural and kind of just like free to be whoever you were and like tell your own stories. Like I think that that's sort of more what I focused on, like what I could connect with him as a character rather than the fact that like, I don't know, there's like this huge sort of moment happening, I guess, like in the Marvel kind of cultural world. Like I don't know, I think I just sort of focused on the micro bits of it, which is just like how to tell yeah, like an emotional story in a way that is digestible. But it was cool. I think after the fact, sort of in retrospect, it is sort of like, oh, that was a lot to like to do. But no, in the moment, it was just sort of about, yeah, like telling a really sweet story about a kid and his parents and like a struggle of identity, and everything else was just sort of like comfortable and part of it.
I cried a lot watching this show, but I cried the most in that episode. So just incredible work.
What part, Joe? What was the thing?
I will say on rewatch, just watching William at his like at the bar mitzvah and like how proud his parents were and how happy and free he looks like dancing with his friends. And no, sorry, I'm gonna cry now. And like knowing what's like coming for him so quickly was devastating, but in a way that I love in storytelling. Yeah.
This room was so committed to the Kaplans and so committed to William Kaplan the before and how we would bridge William into Billy. We talked endlessly about it. And it was like, it was so important to everyone that, you know, that there be sort of an essence to William that carries forward, that he's funny, that he likes horror, that, you know, that he is a queer kid, that he is loved, that he is loving, like all these things that shift when it's Billy, but like there's something special there. I don't know, it was just like every time any person in this room would speak about these things, it was with such earnestness. And then we released, you know, Jason into the wild to write it, and he put his soul in it. And I think everything you responded to is because of these people and their essence.
It's that ooey gooey center of your spooky goths,
Gotta
Jack.
get
Great
the gooey
job.
inside the spooky.
Megan, I want to take a pause on this sort of like episode by episode breakdown to ask you. So you were working on some of my favorite WandaVision episodes. Episode 3 is like an all-timer for me personally. You go and write the Marvels. That's the thing you did. Congratulations. I love the Marvels. I have so many questions to ask you about the Marvels, but you come back as a consulting producer. What is that experience like coming back in? You were saying before we started that you came in like a little late. Can you talk about that shifting role for you?
Yeah, it didn't really click for me until seeing the name of this panel that I maybe don't actually belong to because I was not inside the writer's room. I came on for pre-production and production stuff, so excuse me for being an interloper. But yeah, I just like the privilege of getting to just like read all the scripts in a row, and immediately I was like, oh my gosh, this show is so special. And I don't know, just like excuse to work with these people again, and like I forgot what the question was.
just sort of like
I'm gonna help. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. Joe, you're
Go ahead,
talking.
Jack.
That was
No,
Megan's
no.
still talking. So Megan came on as an on-set writer for me. Because like as I was prepping the episodes, when were we filming, Megan, when you showed up, or were we in prep? What was your duration when you were with us?
It was in prep, and the stuff on the street. It was my first. I
Okay,
think.
so she came on. So I was prepping my episodes and also had like a laundry list of things to manage, like in shoring up our mythology and like actors' notes and logistical changes because of production, and it's just enormous. And so I needed a second brain. And I don't know if you know, but this lady has a world class brain. And so she came and I took so much advantage of Megan. I was like, and also you're going to ride in the car with me every day. That's fine, right? You're fine with that? That's what's happening.
It was such a dream.
And we would just get in the car at the end of the day, and it would be like what, like 15, 20 minutes of ranting. And then we would get to the work, and then we would like huddle over usually Megan's computer because I wouldn't know where mine was, and figure things out. So yeah, so she 1000% belongs on the Zoom. Megan McDonald is the most Megan McDonald thing to be like, I'm in the wrong room. She deserves to be here. But she did have a very different experience than the rest of the folks here, and it was wild.
It was wild. Amazing. I love a rant purge personally. Gia, is your microphone working? I hear sound. No. Okay.
It's Gia from the future.
Yeah, it's like a sci-fi time loop spec script from Gia from Looping Back from the Future. So time loops. Let's just talk like maybe everyone else wants to talk about episode 7, which is like one of the most technically difficult episodes of the season. Cama's food poisoning. Gia's mic has been sabotaged, so it's like it's almost as if nobody wants anyone to know the secrets of episode 7 and how you make such a masterful time skipping through time episode. Does anyone else here in the room want to talk about that, or Jack, sort of some of the ideas that went into making something?
I just want to say that I don't know if the world can see this, but Laura Monti just put in the chat that Gia has a sigil, and that is like a Laura Monti special. It's just to slip that in there. So just for everyone to know why Laura Monti is so wonderful. I was really hoping other people were going to talk about this episode because I can't remember what happened. Can someone remind me? Well, first, someone in the room talk about what we were doing in the room, and then Megan, did you work on 7 or were you gone by the time we were doing 7? I can't remember.
I wasn't there for shooting it, but I
you did some stuff on it. So maybe someone from the room talk about what it was in the room, and then maybe Megan can talk about what it was on set, because like I'm having such a hard time piecing it together.
I'll kick off the room part.
One more time.
Oh wait, it works.
Gia?
Yes. It works.
Yay!
Okay.
Oh, sigil has been broken.
Sigil broken. Sigil removed. Sigil no longer needed. Tell us about putting together episode 7, working in partnership with Cam on this sort of time skipping, time looping episode. Oh no. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. It was really crazy, obviously. I was a writer's assistant at the time, and like Jack said, I thought that I was going to be in trouble when she brought me into her office, so I did not expect anything I did not expect to have the ability to write an episode. And then when I was paired up with Cam, I was so excited because like the first day, Jack asked us what our favorite things were, like kind of like our favorite pieces of media, something that we wanted to like maybe echo and like channel into this series somehow. And he said one of his was Steven Universe, and I was immediately like, oh my god, I love this guy. And so I was really excited to be paired up with Cam. And episode 7 actually went through like a lot of different forms. It like started out as kind of like a send up of like Poseidon Adventure, like Murder on the Orient Express. It was kind of a Death on the Nile style whodunit. And then it like turned into this sort of like climbing a tower thing. And I think we had been talking in the room for a bit about how to honor Lilia's like divination in the best way. And I think Jack had talked about Memento and maybe seeing if we could do some sort of like Memento reference. And I remember Cam and I were working on a like outline later at night, and I was saying like, honestly, like the ideal version of this is if we like had Lilia do this weird stuff all the way throughout the series, and then like we service that in this episode. But that would be insane. So like we probably can't do that. And Cam was like, hold on, maybe let's like talk about this and start writing it. And when we came in and pitched it, I feel like we were putting up like a conspiracy board with all our red string being like, so this will have to be here, and this will have to connect to this, and this will have to connect to this. But despite coming in and accidentally giving more work to everyone else in the room for their respective episodes, we were like really excited about the idea, and Jack was obviously very, very excited about the idea. And we ended up splitting the episode into like chunks, and we had it all I think we wrote it out all chronologically first, not like the episode script, but we had outlined it chronologically, and then we color coded certain chunks and like place them into different spots so that they would make sense throughout like the episode. And then a big part of it as well was obviously the tarot of it all, because on my first day, Jack clocked my, I don't know if you can see it, the Fool tattoo, and was like, okay, we need that in there. And that was a huge, really fun part of it, like researching specific cards, seeing like if we could get specific visuals. Obviously, like Brittany and Ishi were really like big helps. I was not there on the set, but from what I read through all the interviews and everything, Brittany and Ishi were super big helps when it came to like figuring out the visuals of each card and each shot composition. And coming up with the spread was also a really big deal, and that was very fun, and experimenting, trying to see if we could get an existing spread or if we could like create our own spread. And yeah, I feel like I just talked so much after not talking at all, and I'm sorry.
We love it.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. I'm so glad your mic worked. That was wonderful.
Gia's talking about my assistant Brittany Horn, who did the art for the tarot cards, and associate producer Ishi Metkar, who's amazing.
Gia also mentioned Death of the Nile, which is my favorite Agatha Christie story. So points all around. Peter Cameron, thank you so much for your patience. Episode 8. There's two parts of episode 8 that I want to ask you about. You've got this the flashback of Nikki and Agatha and their time together that is so centered on the creation of this song at the same time. So I was wondering if you could talk firstly about sort of what relationship you're having with the songwriters when you're crafting a story that is also connected to writing a song, improvising bits of a song at the same time.
That piece is in, I think, the opening of 9.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. So sorry. Okay,
But
my actual
all we
question
knew
for you.
in the room was that the Lopez's were coming back, and that was great. We also wrote versions of the ballad. Jack assigns homework every night and it can be small questions just to sort of kickstart the next day, or bigger questions like, hey, who are the Kaplans? Who do we think the Kaplans are? And it's because our room hours are so civilized that it's it's just independent study. But I remember we all wrote our own ballads. Laura Donnie's ballad was incredible. I feel like there was a lot of poetry that day. It was really fun. So music was, even though we did not know it was going to be the Lopez's, we didn't know the specifics of what they were going to bring. It was just really comforting to know it was going to be them.
Amazing. Okay, I do have a question about your actual episode. I'm so sorry. I got an 8 and 9 blur in my head. The episode 8 reveal, which is such this huge like Kaiser Soze moment in the show. How did it feel? It's a kind of moment that is so exciting, and then could go so wrong if it's sort of hammering you over the head. And it didn't. I loved the way this reveal came around. Jack knows I was sort of like screaming and jumping up and down on my couch when this moment happened. How do you handle communicating that to the audience, this big thing, and that's sort of like the clues have been here all along for you. We've been waiting for you to arrive at this moment with us.
I think carefully, I suppose. I mean, I remember we talked a lot about movies or TV shows where they tried to do the same thing and it just wasn't successful.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like, oh, this should really be a very slow, deliberate moment. This is not a flashy moment. And a lot of the Marvel finale expectations have long been delivered upon, hopefully, by the time we get there. I remember being really hung up on, I'm such a cinephile to a fault that like I got really hung up on what posters were going to be in this guy's room. And even now I'm like, Poltergeist 2, I don't know. But
Peter, did we involve you in that? It was the most disheartening
Mary
experience.
did, yeah.
Mary got you involved, right? Yeah, because
Yeah.
we couldn't get the things we wanted. We could barely get the rights to the things we wanted, and people
I
think it's so
know.
funny. There's like the goofballs poster.
Yeah,
Like we were doing our best, people. Like
Oh,
there's
yeah,
a lot
no.
of rights issues, but
the
poor Peter.
Buffy once more feeling, I think, was great to have in there. I mean, how much Wizard of Oz feels appropriate without thinking like, oh, this is the only thing this boy cares about.
Yes, kids only watched
it's
and
all
read
about
one
balance.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot about balance and a lot about I remember we talked about too, he's at an age where his interests are shifting.
Mhm.
So the room that he might have made, is probably not the room that he has at the age that he is when he's standing in it, having his sort of Kaiser Soze moment. But what remnants could still be around, or what pieces he kept of Billy. It was a lot of talk about minutia, I suppose.
I love that. I actually have a related question for all of you. So we're gonna do like 2 or 3 round robin questions really quickly. This is the moment where I should be transitioning to questions in the chat, but we don't have a lot yet. So folks, if you want to drop your questions into the chat, we have a few. I just want to make sure we have time for more to come in before I switch to that part. And I do have like a little round robin experiment or two for you guys. One is to build off what you just said, Peter. If it were me and I were to and rights were not an issue and I were able to place one thing in Billy's room, it would be the Buffy Once More with Feeling poster that wound up there, because Buffy is like a formative text for me. So I'm curious for all of you TV writers, if there's like a TV show poster that you would put in Billy's room that is like the TV show that is most formative to you or taught you the most about TV writing or anything like that. Who looks the most ready? Laura Donnie, are you ready? No.
I'm ready. I'm Lost and Twilight Zone. I'm saying too.
I love it.
I second Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone. Okay.
Is this for Twilight Zone? I had
Oh.
Sterling in this picture here, actually.
She wrote her thesis on Twilight Zone.
Amazing.
Donnie's, you're gonna ask if this is for Billy's room or for us personally. Is that the
Yeah,
question?
just for like you, what you would put in Billy's room that you're like, because Jack told me that it was Mary Lamanos who put Once More with Feeling poster. So that was like sort of her piece in his room. So what would be your piece in his room?
Chicago the movie musical.
I love it. Amazing.
That's just me. I can't answer questions like these. I don't consume content.
Twin Peaks from Gia, love that. The Return as well, or just the original flavor? Okay, I'm so sorry. I stretched your microphone to the breaking point. That's on me.
She loves both.
Both. Great. Jason.
I probably would have done Buffy too.
Okay. Joanna?
I don't know. I think the room as it is covers a lot of the things that I really enjoy and all the things that we talked about in the room. I guess more than a poster for me, we like the Ouija board. Like I just love everything that has to do with the horror of it. So yeah, I don't know a poster because it had a lot.
Yeah. And Laura Monty.
I think just for the fun of a callback to WandaVision, throwing some Bewitched in there would be fun.
Very fun. Very good. All right, let me hit a question from the comments. Alicia asks, the episodes have varied runtimes without the constraints of traditional runtimes. How did the team decide what needed to stay versus what could be cut? And how did this flexibility impact the writing process, particularly in terms of pacing and storytelling choices? Who wants to tackle that?
I mean, I think it's me. I'm the one who cut
Yeah.
things. We knew that Jason's episode would be substantial. Let's see what else. I think it was a surprise that Giovanna's episode, like it was a surprise that we were like, we're gonna do the whole big musical number, and then we're also gonna have all of this falling action like in the campfire, and then it was a surprise in post, like on the day on set, and then in post that really that episode is all about that final moment between Rio and Agatha. Like we thought we were doing a musical number episode with a demon and a curse and a whole bunch of stuff, and it turned out we were just doing two ladies almost kissing, and that was the thing. I mean, it was on the page, but like we didn't know. So that ended up being much longer than we thought. Monty's episode 5 ended up being way shorter, I think, than intended, which I think Monty, maybe you can speak to that, was a product of like we had like too much mythology. Monty did so much good work with the Salem 7, but we had to, for pacing and other reasons, we ended up a little bit shortchanging some of that. Is that right, Monty? Is that your memory?
Yeah, we also had like a lot of mythology, like explaining why Agatha's like kind of trial was mediumship and like tying her to mediumship a little bit more. All stuff that I love and is really interesting, and like things that like we should all write a book about at some point, but like stuff that like on the page and for the momentum of the scene and being in these trials was like not what felt right in the moment, I think. And so yeah, and then also the broom sequence at the top changed a lot too, like the length of that, like how we got into it, like what we actually were seeing. And so I think that like impacted the length as well.
Because when did we commit to practical? Was it toward the end of the room? Because
I think end of the room.
Because
End of the room.
End
Because
of
it
the
was
room.
mid my episode, and so
right,
we had
because that's my memory, is that your episode, we were like, sorry, Peter Cameron, good luck with the finale.
But I guess, I was answering like, I feel like for a very long time, we wanted it to be as like in the dirt and grounded. I feel like from the get, we didn't want to have that much CG.
Yes, true. But we also were like, there was room for the skeleton of Sparky and vines that had their own like power. And then we were like, you get one vine and some twinkly lights.
Really quickly, speaking of Jack mercilessly cutting things from your script, does everyone want to go around and say what their like most cherished murdered darling was? Like any idea that you had that didn't make it, that most gutted you as a writer? What did Jack murder?
I remember there's a scene, they actually shot it too. I think it just got cut from the episode, but at the beginning of 6, there's a scene of like Billy trying to psych him. Well, I guess William trying to like psych himself up in the mirror before like his little bar mitzvah. And it's just like a little moment of him talking to himself before. And yeah, I miss that. I want it on a disc just so I can watch it at home over and over again.
I love this exercise because then I can tell you why it was, or I can say why it was cut, because it was lovely. We ended up leaning into the music, like because the mood carried us, and because Christoph and Michael did such incredible score, and because Joe's vocal performance was so moving. But yeah, that was very lovely. Wait, Megan, was yours Donnie's belled cap line from 9? Will you do that?
Wait, I totally forgot about it. But wait,
So
say it,
there
say it.
was a scene. So in 9, when Billy comes running home, we had a scene where Eddie was there, and they sort of had a thing. We ended up cutting it. We didn't even shoot it because it just kind of gummed up the works. But it meant that when Agatha shows up as a ghost, she had seen Eddie. So then when she's like, look, I'm a ghost, can you dig it? She takes an opportunity to sort of razz Billy for his boyfriend, like just having seen him. And she says, Donnie, do you remember it? That she's like, do you remember it? Reminded me of a jester I used to know.
Yeah.
It's
But you remember I'm just, you say it.
he reminds me of a jester I used to know, not literally, but usually like more energetically. He's got a good face shape for a belled cap. And
Oh yeah.
Megan McDonnell couldn't recover from it. But we had
I
to
do
cut it because
remember
she never
that.
saw Eddie, so it was a logistical cut.
A good face shape for a belled cap.
Belled cap.
Those are,
Han
yeah.
nailed it. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna stop talking. Other people talk.
Any other murdered darlings?
I will just, since I'm here, I feel like there was a lot more on the page in 9 of Agatha giving birth. And there was like a lot that I had decided was how like a witch would give birth. And like what remained, which I'm so grateful for, is that like she fucking cut a lemon and bit it. But there was like a crystal around an umbilical cord. Like there was just like we really had her give birth. And I missed just I remember feeling so, I mean, I'm so thrilled that we got to show any of it, but truly, but the idea that we could have had like 4 minutes of like Catherine Hahn giving birth as Agatha Harkness was like filled me up.
It was, and so when it was not censored, we didn't film all the things. It was my mission because in WandaVision, I wanted Wanda's birth to be like really like natural and raw, and that was like the one note we got from Disney Plus was like she'll be behind a couch, right? And we were like, oh, okay. So then with Agatha, I was like, we're gonna be showing some real birth, even though that's a meaty baby and not at all a fresh baby, but it's all we could afford. Anywho, but so Donnie had done all this incredible work in both 2 and 9 with all the witchy. Like Agatha had like a witch kit in 102 that she gathered like rawhide and a candle wick and all this stuff. And so those things were kind of companions. When she gave birth, she had all this sort of like accoutrement. But yeah, it was sadly texture that went out the window, along with the baby and the bathwater.
Anyone else? Everyone else has made peace with their murdered darling? Okay. Toby from the comments asks, how much, if any, do you talk about likability or relatability of Agatha during her ups and downs on the road? We know early on that all the witches are expected to die and that she's happy to be the last girl. Sidebar, Billy's/Joe's lipstick as Maleficent was everything. Thank you. So, great comment. So yeah, likability. This is like such I will just quickly editorialize and say this is such like an interesting question that I feel like goes in and out of vogue when talking about how to write women on television. I remember this coming up a lot around like shows like You're the Worst. There were just sort of like this sort of era of how much do we need to care about likability when it comes to female characters? Do we ever ask ourselves this question when it comes to male characters, et cetera, et cetera? So, Jack, any thoughts about this question as it pertains to Agatha?
I mean, I think we always talked about it not in terms of likability, but in terms of what is too far. I think that like, right, team, like it was like what is like where you can't come back from it. To illustrate a point though of like not the sort of big action, but the small texture in 9, Donnie and I wrote 9 together, and I added a thing where Agatha doesn't let Nikki call her mama. And most of the room was like, that's terrible. And I was like, no, it's Agatha. And everyone was like, that's terrible. And then we shot it as I wrote it. And then we were in editing and like the post team was like, yeah, that's terrible. So there were like in post, there was some massaging and Catherine always gave us levels. But I think, and actually maybe this is a time to do this. I've spoken in press a lot about, because people always ask me about the Jolene thing, which was Laura Donnie's baby. That's so funny. But when we did our assignment of like, what are the like evil thing, like the small evil things that Agatha did, that assignment was born of Mary Lavanos being like, let's remember why we like seeing Agatha be bad. Like what is the, like, let's really get in with the vicarious thrill and the delight of her brand of villainy. But when we did that assignment, do you all remember specifics from that? And if you don't, bless you, because I can't remember either.
One that you reminded me of that I did apparently was the idea that she held on to somebody's biopsy lab results like much longer than is fair. But that was real dark. Was that okay to say?
Yeah, that really made me laugh.
Maybe it was for a very bad other person.
Yeah.
And maybe they were positive. I mean, negative. Oh,
Oh,
bye.
poor Donnie.
All right, Mickey asks, Mickey says, thank you so much for the show with about 5 or 6 exclamation marks. And then, can you give us a sample of what a day looked like in the writing room? So something that Peter said earlier was that you guys had sane hours in the writer's room, and that's not true for every writer's room. Sometimes they're pulling all-nighters. Sometimes they don't want to go home, so they just would prefer to be at the office. That is just true of some TV writers. What was a day in the life of the Agatha writer's room?
One of you guys should answer that. Yeah, Gia.
She's not allowed.
Okay, in the
I've
future,
talked a lot, so somebody else answer it.
Okay, well, I'll start. I'll say that like the day in the life of the WandaVision writers room was different than what it was in the Agatha's room because we were, I think, on the tail end of COVID too, so there was a limit to how many writers could be in the physical space. So we were on like kind of a rotation system of some people on screen and some people in the office. But like, anyways, all that aside, I think like the general shape of the room, kind of, Peter mentioned these homework assignments, so we would go in and kind of do that almost like a workout warm up. But sometimes that was where like the best ideas were kind of born. And then Jac would always have a very targeted plan of like what problems we were tackling that day. And so then we would kind of all put our brains together and try to tackle those problems as best as we could with the rest of the time that we had, I guess. And then, yeah, just to kick it off, I guess. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts.
No, I would agree. There was always like a sort of a directive at least like a couple things that we were going to focus on. And sometimes we went into like weird tangents that turned into like a completely other really incredible story point. But yeah, it was a very like fun, again, it was a sort of like play, right? Like there's just like a really creative energy, and I feel like there was a lot of freedom to kind of like go wherever the thing that we were talking about was taking us. And so we set up, there was a structure to it, but we can sort of do whatever in between.
I'm gonna speak for Gia for really quickly, and just to rewind, when Jac was asking what were other people's like bad ideas, things that bad Agatha had done. Gia's contributing that one of Cam's bad Agatha pitches was that once a year Agatha chooses a kid to tell that the Easter Bunny / Santa isn't real. So love that. Great stuff from Agatha. All right. Any other day in the life of the writer's room stories that you guys want to tell? I have one last prompt before I
I'll
send
just
you on
add
your
that
way.
like
Yeah.
there was also a fair amount of like watching a music video together and like watching random clips and like listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac like as a team. And like I think what's really cool about how Jac runs a room is like there's stuff that breaks up, that just stimulates your brain differently. So like, or she'll have us watch a certain show and we'll come in and we'll discuss it. So like, even if we're not talking directly about breaking story, we're like in a creative space that feels intentional. And that also, just like to be sort of nitty gritty about it, is a very like healthy, useful way to write for however many hours a day. And I think it's like essential to actually getting good work done, is like taking a sidestep over here or a sidestep over here. It's part of the soup that makes the whole thing.
Yeah, just really quick to add to that, my favorite part of it that I hadn't experienced before were the assignments, because they were always a challenge, right? And like a creative challenge. And it was just so interesting to spend time in the room, like having the writer's room discussion, and then go home and just think about something specific that she would tell us, or do some research, or bring a presentation about tarot. And it's a combination of not only you learn so much about things that are related to the room and to the topics and the themes, but also, I don't know, it's just like so creative. I think, but at least speaking for myself, I think I thought or came up with things thanks to those assignments that I probably wouldn't have in the room, just because in the room is such a conversation, and then when you go home and you think, it's like it's you and your brain, and then you have the space and the challenge, and it's just, I don't know, I hadn't had that in a room before, and I think it's just so unique and special of this room, and just thanks for that. I enjoyed it a lot.
Peter, were you going to say something? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say one thing that I do remember that was really fun was at the very beginning of the room, Jack sent us all these little like witch kits, and we basically did like magic together to start the room off. And I don't know, I feel like it worked. So
what's in the witch kit?
there's a lot of stuff. There was like, I think we each got like a little notebook of some kind that was sort of like meant to be some kind of a spell book as the room went on. And then I think we all got black nail polish, which was really fun.
She is showing what?
Yeah. The tarot card.
Tarot.
There was like
I went and got, because we were supposed to be in person, and then like a week before they told us we had to be remote the first week entirely, and I was devastated. So yeah, I had my wonderful assistant Jess go and give these little packages to everybody so that we could have a spell together on the first day. And I gave everyone selenite, I think, because I had like a big chunk of selenite, because a witch had told me that like if I had a big chunk and everybody had a little chunk, that we would like, I could be, got to be the center of attention, but like that, like we could have a sort of like nexus. I could be the nexus being. Guys, I'm Scarlet Witch. Let's be real.
Wow. Amazing. Peter, was there something you were going to say about day in the life of the writers' room?
Yeah, something else that's unique is that lunch would roll around, and it's not uncommon in a writer's room that everybody would peel off and go make phone calls or go answer emails or eat independently or just sit around or pair off and talk about personal stuff. Like in both WandaVision and Agatha, it's not like we would stick to talking explicitly about work, but more often than not, like the conversation would just continue. And it's because everything felt so buoyant and felt so much like play that it's like, why wouldn't we keep doing it this way? It's more fun than poking around at your salad and like telling some story about your accountant bothering you or whatever.
I've kept you all a little over time, but I have one more question if you guys have patience with me, which is other than the nexus being that is Jac Schaeffer, who I guess needs to be the center of attention. No, this is a very like generous group, not a very self-aggrandizing group. So I was wondering if before we could go, you all could say something about someone else on this call, something that someone else on this call brought to the room that you really loved, an idea, a vibe, a baked treat, whatever it is. Like, what did someone else on this call contribute to the process?
Megan McDonnell is responsible for the gag in episode 8 where Rio takes out the dagger and just cuts a hole in that backdrop as her exit. And it is so badass. It's like my favorite gag in the show. And that's Megan McDonnell.
That's so good.
I mean, Jack actually asked us a few weeks ago, like what something favorite is for us from the show. And my response was about the Kaplan parents, and how much we all love them. And I just think Jason is responsible for, really like taking this like thing that was very important to all of us, that like we like the captains, we like the Kaplans, and we want Billy to have like a really good home life. And I think Jason just like really beautifully, like in dialogue and essence, like created a family, like you said, Joanna, like that felt very easy and cozy. And I think that is something that the audience felt, and I certainly felt. And so I think he did that very beautifully.
I would say I never really shared this before to Peter, but Peter, I think that your trial, I remember when you came in and pitched it initially, And it was kind of a unique challenge too, because we were at the tail end of like the series, and the trial doesn't need to be as like it was almost getting to the point where like the trial could have been distracting from the actual story that was trying to be told. And so it was a really unique challenge. And I remember you pitching just like this blank room and them waking up in body bags, and like the whole concept of them having to grow something in this room that is just completely devoid of life. And I just thought that was so simplistic and beautiful that like, and it really was executed very well too, like by the team. But like, yeah, I just, that's always something that I really enjoyed. So yeah.
Cam's not here, but I will just say generally, he had like a Rubik's Cube kind of brain where like every time we ran into like a problem or something we needed to solve or like a creative solution, like he would just figure it out. It was just like wonderful to watch and really cool. And we were lucky to have that.
I think it's unfair that we need to pick one, because really being in the room with these writers, it's just it's a very unique experience, and it's a very collaborative and creative experience, and all of them have incredible strengths and just amazing ideas. Like I would sit there and be like, wow, like it would have never occurred to me. And it's just hard to pick one, but I would say I really appreciated Laura Monti's commitment to the Salem 7. I think I remember that she was the one to pitch, because we needed like not the big bad, but like, you know, the not so bad that distracted us from the big bad. And she was the one that I remember brought up the Salem 7, and she did a lot of research. She did a presentation, and the presentation was awesome. And well, she convinced Jack.
Amazing.
Can I say Donnie? I like I wasn't in the room, so I wasn't able to. But like from what's on the page, something that always really inspires me about Laura's writing is like how we can have like a big show with like big world building and big characters and like whatever, and she's able to like craft these like incredibly intimate, quiet moments and like do so much work in like outside of the story kind of retelling that just like changes everything you think about the story. And like with this with obviously with Nikki and Agatha stuff, but also with Agatha's flashback in WandaVision for like when she was in her coven and stuff. There are a bunch of versions of that too, but just like the vulnerability and the there's something just like so gorgeous about how she's able to get into the emotion of these little moments that I am always inspired by.
I love it. Okay. I mean, Gia, do you want to chat me anything? You already shouted out Cam.
I
Or...
can try.
Oh,
If
yes.
Awesome. Okay. I'm glad my mic works because it lets me sing Cam Squire's praises one more time, because I could not have asked for a better writing partner and a mentor, and being able to write like a really fun and strange episode with someone whose brain worked in fun and strange ways that my brain also works was just an incredible experience. And there's no one that I would rather spend 8 hours on the phone untangling random plot threads that we plot problems that we created for ourselves with.
I love it. Jack, any last word you want to have here?
I might do just like a holistic one. I mean, I think, you know, we were so motivated to carry certain things into the show. You know, William Kaplan being Jewish in the comics and bringing that in, and being gay in the comics, and then where we've sort of naturally ended up flowing with Agatha's storyline with Rio. I needed this room in order to handle all of that elegantly, and with intention and with strength, but with like the lightest touch and like just the humanity of it. So I just think every person, every writer on this show had like was on that same wavelength, was playing that same key of like, here is how we are going to be inclusive in all the ways, and have it feel natural and correct and clear-eyed. And yeah, I'm so grateful for that from all of them.
Thank you to all of you for this panel, for the wonderful, beautiful show that you created. I hope you're seeing all the people in the comments. Thank you for your incredible show that you created. My apologies to Eddie for calling him Teddy. I am so sorry. I did do that, and I apologize to everyone for doing that. And thank you to Dustin and the WGA for having us. This is a real joy for me. So thank you all. Bye.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Big round of applause to Jack, Joanna, Giovanna, Megan, Laura, Peter, Laura, Gia, and Jason. What a great group of people. That actually concludes WG Festival. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have all of our sessions available in the replay tab. This one will be available later this evening, up to a week until that stream closes. So thank you all. Have a great rest of your weekend and happy writing.